Hey, welcome to the channel. My name is Ben. I talk about meditation and spirituality on this channel. I'm a meditation teacher, and like many of you will know, I've been meditating since I was about 6 years old. My dad was a teacher, and I've been under the guidance of a very, very advanced spiritual teacher throughout that time. I've been teaching for the last 4 years. And since I've created this channel, I have had a lot of comments and messages from people talking about fear. And often it's associated with a meditation experience that they had or some kind of resistance that they've got to doing meditation that is bringing up this fear. And I wanted to go through today exactly why you have that fear, where that fear is coming from, and how you can overcome it. The first thing is, why do we feel fear? Why do we feel fear in any situation? From an evolutionary point of view, we've got an ego. We've got this part of us that gives us this sense of I. When we say I, when we refer to ourselves as an individual, it's the ego that gives us that sense of I. And the sense of I, the ego, comes about from the body, the mind, and the vital parts of the human being. This combination brings about this sense of individuality, this ego. Now, in lots of situations, or in some situations, fear is perfectly valid, as we know. You know, if you're climbing a cliff face, if you're in a dangerous environment, if an animal was chasing you in caveman times, we needed fear. We needed that adrenaline rush. We needed our senses to be heightened, and we needed to be able to run and have a sense of I need to protect this body. So fear in some situations is brilliant, and this is really the reason why we need an ego and the reason we've got an ego. The problem is that this sense of I, this ego, has evolved. As we as human beings has evolved and become more intelligent, this ego has also evolved and become more intelligent. And now, when we want to do things that are good for us, when we want to meditate, or maybe we want to change jobs, maybe we need to move to a new area, we often feel fear. We feel fear about change. We feel fear when we want to do something that's beneficial to us and we don't know why we're feeling fear. We're like, why am I scared about this thing? I know it's good for me. I know I need to be doing it, but for some reason I'm scared. Well, this ego that we have is very much in charge for the majority of people. It's very much happy that we do not know what our true nature is. Because whilst we are wrapped up in this sense of individuality, we don't really know who we are. Like if I was to ask you, who are you? When you refer to yourself as I, you say, I am this, I am a writer, I am a carpenter. What actual part of you is the I that you're referring to? If you go through a bit of a process of elimination, you'll find that you're not the body, you're not the mind, you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts. So there's a sense of I, but there's no tangible part of you that you can say that is me, that is the part of me that I'm referring to. So this ego is kind of imaginary in the way. It's illusionary. It doesn't really exist, this sense of individuality. And even science knows this. Science knows that the space between me and this camera doesn't actually exist. It feels separate, but it's full of atoms, the same atoms that I'm made up of and the same atoms that the camera's made up of. So there's actually no separation. But the way that the senses are perceiving reality gives off the impression that there is a separation between everything, and so we all consider ourselves as being individual. But with this sense of I, it means that we aren't really aware of the reality of life. And the ego is very aware of that. The ego knows that we are wrapped up in individuality and that we don't know who we are. The ego also knows that when we do realize who we are and what we are, it is no longer needed. You can't have the ego and also be God realized or have merged back with unity consciousness, for want of a different way of putting it. Those two cannot exist. So the ego knows this. The ego knows that you do not know who you are yet. And in order to keep that the same, in order to stay in that state, it provides things like fear, it provides things like resistance, like any kind of hurdle internally that we face when we try to do something productive in our life is, generally speaking, coming from the ego. And a lot of people, I've spoke about this before with people, and they say, oh, no, the fear that you feel is actually coming from a fear of loss or some kind of trauma. And that might be true. But what part of you feels the trauma? What part of you is it that feels loss? It's the ego. The ego feels like it's lost something, because you, as infinite divine consciousness, can't lose anything. You are everything. There's nothing to lose. So it's the ego that actually feels the loss. It's the ego that feels all of this hurt and all of this trauma that is wrapped up in the ego. So jealousy, anger, fear, all of these, what we would consider negative attributes, all stem from the ego. So knowing this fact, one way of looking at fear, and this was a way that was provided to me by a teacher that I know, and I just loved it. He used to say, fear is a red cross that marks treasure. And obviously what he meant was that fear is a sign that that's where you need to be. Fear is a sign that whatever the thing is that you're afraid of, providing you can look at it logically and say, well, there's nothing that's going to harm me, or there's no logical reason why I'm afraid now, that probably means you should be doing that thing. So if you're feeling fear about meditating, for whatever reason, know that that is coming from your ego. That is coming directly from the part of you that does not want you to meditate, because it knows that when you sit down to meditate, you're learning more about yourself. You're basically becoming more and more realized. You're becoming closer and closer to the absolute part of you, the unity consciousness, God consciousness, full awareness, whatever term you want to use. You're getting closer to that real part of your nature every time you sit down and meditate. And the ego knows that. So the ego will go, oh, here's a bit of fear, here's a bit of resistance, here's a bit of laziness, all of that rubbish that we end up living, that kind of behavior, those behaviors that we take on and end up living by, that get in the way of us doing good things. That's from the ego. That is from the part of us that does not want us to do those things. And it happens in other ways. Like if you take on any kind of healthy habit in life, you'll feel resistance. You'll feel some kind of internal laziness or resistance or fear. And it's all coming from that part of you. It doesn't want you to progress. And everyone's at a different level, of course. So for you, progressing might be, or for someone else, progressing might be just improving their diet. For someone else, it might be losing some weight and getting their body in better shape. For you, it might be meditating every day. It might be really progressing the meditation. Whatever the situation is, we all have internal resistance, and it all stems from the ego. Whether it's some kind of emotion, the root cause of that is our sense of I. Because without that sense of I, there's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing, we have everything. We are everything. So we don't have anything to feel fear from, if that makes sense. So the real key to overcoming this is, first of all, to be aware and notice when you're starting to feel fear, and then recognize within yourself that fear is a sign of that's actually where I need to be. And if you can then notice the fear, feel the fear, but act in despite of the fear and do the thing anyway, which is very hard, but if you can do that in micro steps, do it bit by bit and as much as you can manage, this is how you really overcome fear eventually. And once you do step over that threshold, the fear will dissipate. It won't persist. It will at least reduce, and then you can do it again, and it eventually will dissipate. So I hope this helps you if you're feeling fear or resistance for doing things that you know you should be doing, especially with regards to meditation or any kind of spiritual practice. Know that it's coming from this part of yourself and do the thing anyway. I hope this video was useful, and I hope to see you on the next one.